Welcome back to the final edition of Power Hour, a mini comp show featuring Lenny. We are flipping it yet again. Last week we flipped it. I did the ranking. Somebody else picked the teams. This week we're putting a little spin on it. Instead of just going for 2 for 1, me and my guest, Chris Long of the Great Green Light podcast and of many other things, including a multi-year NFL career, I'm doing tiers. And I'm going to give you a tier. I'm going to give you the teams in the tier, and then you're going to rank inside the tier, and that's how we're going to power rank the NFL. How you feeling?
Well, I feel good, except some people are going to think that these are my power rankings. Can you
I know.
please let them know that you tiered them?
Yeah.
Because, for instance, there's a couple teams that are down a ways that I think could be up a ways. You know what I mean?
But you don't have that power. You can't go outside the tier. You're coloring inside the lines
I
that
know,
I've created.
I
Yeah.
know, but like these things stress me out. When I got on here and I saw all the colors and all the tiers, I was like, no.
For the YouTube audience, we are live tiering with a very cool graphic. Shout out to Brian. Yeah, I did it this way because I've done the 2 for 1 so many times now. We did it with Ryan Clark. We did it with Mallory Rubin. Field Yates helped me last time. So Kyle Brandt. So I wanted to mix it up because I think people now have like a sense of like kind of what I think. So I
Yeah.
wanted to mix it up a little bit. However, the tiers are pretty similar to what I've been doing. But you're gonna make this different because your choices will probably be different from mine.
No
So we're
question.
gonna start at the top.
Okay.
This is the tier I call duh. These are the very obvious Super Bowl contenders. I think everybody has kind of largely agreed with this top 4. We've seen a little bit of variance. Some of these teams, a couple of them have dropped out of the top 4, but for the most part, this is the top 4. This is not spicy of me. This is not, I think, that divisive. I'm going with the teams that played the championship games last year because I do think these are the top 4 teams in the NFL. So we're putting them up. This is not the order that we're just putting them up. They are, of course, the Chiefs and the Ravens in the AFC, the Niners and the Lions in the NFC. And now, Chris, it is your job to power rank these 4 teams in any order you choose. And we got to go with that.
As you have them, and I know Ravens fans are going to say I'm disrespecting you by putting you last in this group of 4, but I am not. You had your chance in the playoffs last year. I'm going 4 Ravens. I think they got the most to prove. I really do. I look at this and I say, yeah, they're scary. Lamar's that dude, and Henry, if he's healthy, great. If he gets dinged or they're managing his load, you've got Keaton and you got Justice Hill and these guys, but do you have an every down back at that point? Like, there are some question marks. Didn't do a lot at receiver. I think they think of themselves as a 12 personnel team, so I don't blame them. I'm not going to
Yeah.
hold that against the Bills when I get to them in a minute at some point. But I think they've got Wiggins, who's got to prove himself. They got Simpson, who's got to prove himself. There's a lot. Clowney, they brought him in because they needed an injection of pass rush, and he gave them that. But now he's gone, and he's on his Clowney World Tour. So, they're a damn good football team. I am not disrespecting y'all, but last year, I feel like they had an opportunity to prove something in the playoffs and they didn't. I also think they're going to have a better game plan the next time they get there. There's a lot of learning that goes into winning in the playoffs. It's just taking them a little longer. I would say the Niners 3. Now,
Wow.
Yeah, well,
okay. No, you're the first person. Well, this is a little spicy.
I think the Lions are just as good as the Niners. This is all a toss-up, right? Like, I do think these 3 teams are better than the Ravens because they prove more. And I think the Lions have done so much to fix some of their problems last year in the secondary. Let's put the fire out. Like, I really like what Brad and Dan did. Like, let's just put the fire out, whether it's Carlton Davis, which is a little bit under the radar, or Rakestraw, that sort of thing. Like, now they can commit more bodies into the front with, safeties coming down and that sort of thing, where last year I felt like they just got gashed in certain situations and they had the ball thrown over their head. So the big question for me was, what were they going to go out and attack that position at the secondary? And I really do think they did that. And I just want to say this about the Niners. I like what they did. I'm going to give you some love. I like what they did up front with Malik Collins. I think Leonard Floyd is an upgrade over Chase Young, and that's no disrespect. I just think they got better. Now, Greenlaw's not going to be playing for a little bit. So can Campbell still run? Armstead wasn't worth what they had to pay him in their minds, so they went out and they did the thing. And I'm totally good with most of the moves they've made. I just think when you look at that playoff game, there's a lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda. I'm not
Yeah.
saying hey, Lions should have been here, should have been there, because the Niners, you could say, should have won that damn game in the Super Bowl if it weren't for Greenlaw getting hurt. Before that moment, they looked like the best team in the league, but the Lions match up pretty good against them. And I think the Lions got better. And also, you have to think about if you're the Niners, how many times have you been there? And I've been the one every preseason to say they'll be back there. When you get that close year after year, I would imagine it can be difficult to continue to get on the horse. And for the Lions, they got a taste of it, and I think they're really hungry. And I think they got better. Chiefs are Super Bowl champs. All right, I don't need to dust off my take from last year. I don't need to dust off the takes from last year, Mina. The Chiefs are it's Patrick Mahomes. I don't care how many bat crazy things happen in the offseason or, you say Taylor Swift's distracting or what. Like, they just win football games in the playoffs. They'll figure it out. They'll weather the storm. They'll be right back in the mix. I think they're number one presumptively out of that group of four.
So I don't think we need to talk about the Chiefs. I don't even think we need to talk about the Ravens. I do want to hone in on the Niners Lions thing because I think that is your
That's
most
fine.
potentially controversial take here.
Yeah, but who
So
cares? Like, who's mad? What can you say if you're a Niners fan? Like,
well, that's what I want to ask you. If those two teams played each other,
yeah,
you would pick the Lions to beat the Niners.
I picked them last year and I felt like they were right there.
Okay. Interesting.
I really do. And I don't think it's that hot a take. I think the Lions, when they play inside or it ain't inclement weather outside, they look fine. Like, they can play with anybody. They beat Kansas City last year on a Monday night to open the season. It feels like 5 years ago. I love the way they played down in Dallas. They got robbed down there. And like, I understand that I'm a Dan Campbell apologist at every turn in the road. I've also been critical of some of his moves, but I got to say, this team's got a little juice to them, and they got better. Did they not get better?
I think so, but I do think a lot is riding on some pretty young corners.
No
And
question.
there's this thing I keep going back to. We were just talking about the Saints, who we're going to get to way down the road, but I do feel like off-ball linebacker is more important than it's ever been. The Niners have the best one in the NFL, and I look at the Lions and I love that they added DJ Reader. Hutchinson's really good, but I still look at this defense and I think they're not quite there. They're still missing.
I just look at, they were this close, and
Yeah.
it was a dumpster fire back there. If they just put the fire out and give these guys, like, over the course of a season, guys can get better. And I'm not when I do this, like, they could come out the gate and give up 40 the first 3 weeks. Well, how are they going to play in December when the veteran presence of like Carlton Davis rubs off on some of these guys? And like, that guy can play, and the rush gets home, and the whole thing. My young defensive tackle just busted in the room like Big Bird. She opened the door, Mina, and it reminded me of the Big Bird GIF where the Big
Oh
Bird
yeah, knocking it down.
yeah.
I'm so scared of mine learning how to open doors. It's going to be like that scene in Jurassic Park when the raptor starts opening the door. He's already eyeing the latch on his little baby gate, and he started fiddling with it, and it's so terrifying. Okay,
Yeah, I don't hate the Niners. I think the Niners are and this is what people forget. If you go back to the opener every year, I say Niners are going to be either in the Super Bowl or in the championship game. I have not wavered from that. They might still be there. I just think if Detroit gets there again, they might beat them. I like Detroit.
you're a Niners hater. That's okay.
Right. It's like, come on. I tell you, my favorite
No,
place
no,
to
no.
play growing up was Candlestick. You know who I used to really hate was your Seahawks. Now I'm over that.
This is I'm joking. No fan base can be angry about it. If you're in the top four,
Yeah, bro. It's
just
a duh.
relax.
It's a
This
duh.
is you get the ones who are going to get angry. I think are in the yellow green territory, to be honest. But we'll get there. Because first we're going to a category that I am calling unburdened by what has been. I got the Texans and the Packers here, man. Because don't you feel like I've been saying this all off season? They are like the NFC, AFC version of each other, where it's like the vibes are immaculate. The quarterbacks are exciting. They're ahead of schedule. They've shed all the baggage of the past. I think these two teams, their fan bases are the luckiest in the NFL right now. But my question for you is, which one's better?
I think the Texans are better, but I love them both. Like, I really do. You talk about the Niners again being a barometer on the road. Like, Jordan Love was plenty good to win that game. Like, he was plenty good to win that game. And, you know, there were some things that they didn't do well that night that I think with a year under their belt, they'll be better at when they get to the playoffs. And a big question for me is, like, what do you do defensively with the new coordinator?
Yeah.
Are they an odd front? Are they an even front? I kind of like the group they have as an even front. I actually think they
You're
can.
talking about Green Bay with Halfley.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, I've been on a 3-week vacation. They probably are going to report here in the next couple of days. We'll know a lot more about how their defense is being run. But, like,
Yeah.
I really like the guys up front for them. I think they showed out last year. There's just a little bit of, for me, what do you do? What do you do at running back when you need something out of the backfield in the passing game? I thought Aaron Jones was just, like, awesome for his whole career there. Clutch guy that you could get the ball to in a ton of different ways. And Josh Jacobs is going to have to be that guy, and they're going to find other ways to get people the ball out of the backfield and that sort of thing. But I think those receivers getting a year older, and
Mm.
Jordan Love, to me, is, like you said, mirror image. I think the reason these two teams are where they are is because they got grown men playing quarterback. Jordan's been there. He's been there for years now. But, like, CJ Stroud, I think the Texans should be in the dog category. I think there should be 5 teams in that category. I really do.
Wow, really?
Well, why not? Because I think the defense got a lot better,
You would
and
put
they
them
were.
fifth
I don't know if I'd put them 5th.
over the Ravens?
Ravens got a lot to prove. They beat them last year in the playoffs, but I'm projecting that CJ Stroud and that whole group
Yeah,
grows up a little bit. And when they do, it's going to be scary. Here's the thing about the defense. Everything they did, they upgraded.
yeah.
Think about it. They go out and get an edge rusher. He's one of the best in the league, Hunter, right? I liked Grenard, but Hunter's blue chip. They
Yeah.
go out and get Al Shire at linebacker. That dude is going to add so much to that defense from, like, a range perspective and the whole thing. I was geeking about that signing. And then, you know, I love Autry.
Autry and Al-Shire are, like, NFL nerds' favorite NFL players because when they like, those are just when they signed both of them, I was like, "Oh, like, the
The
pictures coming
nerds are going
together."
to love
Yeah,
this
right. You're like,
team, dude.
these are just, like, the perfect additions for especially for a D'Amico Ryans defense.
Yeah, and hey, if the corner they got in the second round, I think they snagged a corner early. You're the draft guru, but I we'll see. I think they got better in a lot of areas, and I think CJ's a big enough dude to handle the Diggs thing. You know, and right now they're just trying to win. They wouldn't have gone out and done the Diggs thing if they didn't think CJ is a grown man enough to handle the situation. He's going to be, and Nico Collins and Tank Dell, the whole thing, like, they're just a good football team, and people should
Yeah.
be afraid of the Texans, and they should be afraid of the Packers. But I think the Texans did some things this offseason that really impressed me.
All right, I think that's fair. CJ Stroud year 2, any concerns before we move on?
The whole sophomore slump thing.
Yeah.
Listen,
I don't
I
have them, but
I don't have him. Hey, listen, you watch him play the Jets when nobody's out there at wide receiver, he looks like a rookie. But it also reinforces that the delta between him and, like, the dude down in Carolina, Bryce, might not be as big as people think. For instance, because when you see a guy go out there without the talent around him,
yeah.
he's not perfect. I'm not saying he's like Jordan, but the guy is like he gives me Burrow vibes, CJ. And when they went and beat Cincinnati on the road, everybody should have been like, okay, this team's going to be for real for a long time.
Well, you mentioned the Bengals. They are in my next category. I'm calling this legacy admissions. These are the teams that have been good now for the last, like, 4 or 5 years, but there's some cracks, there's some losses of talent on both sides of the ball. So the Bengals are in here. Both the Cowboys and the Eagles I'm putting in this category, and I'm also putting the Bills in here. I have found this to be the hardest group to rank, actually. No, easy for you. Okay.
I just have big opinion. I have big opinions in this group, predictably, but
You got. I feel like you have pent up takes. I'm really excited to be the beneficiary of that.
well, no, it's good. It's just good talking to you, Mina, and talking ball with some people. I've been on vacation, so I just had all these thoughts in my head. But I will stand on the table for the Bills. I think Josh Allen's that good. I'm not like one of these people that
I love this. I
I think
love this. No, join me on the Bills are underrated island. This has been my take all season. Everybody's been freaking out that they've lost players who like didn't really play that well anymore. Like, no, I am not worried about the Bills.
I worry more about things on defense than I do offense. I actually think, listen, this kid from Florida State, I don't know. I've been watching the NFL a while. Some of these guys produce pretty early. If the quarterback's good and you walk into a room where the quarterback can sling it and you got a good offensive scheme and there's other people to draw some coverage away from you, you can look like a number one. And if this Coleman kid looks like a number one, then what are we saying? If he looks like Rashee Rice for them, what are we saying? And I think the reason I don't freak out about Diggs leaving is because you said it in the second half of last season, and I'm a big fan of the way he competes and the whole thing, but it just wasn't working anymore. And Brady comes in, and I don't know, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but this is the way I interpret it. Stop trying to force the ball to this guy. Get the ball to the two tight ends, and we'll get the ball to Cook out of the backfield, and we'll start doing some funky back switch stuff. Like I loved what they became offensively. We're going to run the ball, one of the highest clicks in the league. We go to Dallas comes up to play us. We absolutely just curb stomp Dallas. It's like
Yeah.
when they were right last year, you didn't need five wide, every receiver having gone for 1,000 yards before. You got the two tight ends, and I like Shakir, and I love Josh Allen as a football player. I don't know the guy, but I think he took a lot of heat last year, and I watched the playoffs. Somebody had to lose that game.
Yeah.
He's playing against Jordan in the playoffs. He ain't Patrick Mahomes, but a lot of y'all's favorite quarterbacks are not Josh Allen. I just want to say that. So I put the
Okay,
Bills
Bills won. Okay.
quarterback, and then I put the Eagles too because I think the Eagles are going to be pretty good this year. There's some things I'm concerned about. There's position battles up front, like right guard. It's following in Kelsey's footsteps. Hey, Uzama's a good insurance policy. If Goddard gets hurt again, Saquon's really exciting for me, not just because it's obvious it's Saquon Barkley, but it's like smart because they haven't done that before. Howie hasn't done it yet. And then what happens when Kelsey leaves and you got some question marks up front, relatively speaking, you up the skill level of the guy getting the ball in the backfield. And, ironically, you think about this high-powered offense, like I'm just wondering who the third receiver is.
Yeah.
That's a big question for me. Is it the A&M kid? I think Aeneas Smith is his name. Aeneas Smith. I'm not sure. It's spelled a little differently. I don't know who these guys are. We'll see this month and beyond, but like I think there's a lot of that for the Eagles, and defensively.
I want to ask you about that because obviously we talked about this last year when the whole team kind of fell apart, but I was looking when we did the NFC East and I was looking at the depth chart. I said something about the Eagles, which I don't think I've said about the Eagles for like 10 years. Certainly not the case when you were there. The D line is thin, man. And this used to be the deepest. I mean, you remember the signature of this team was waves of pass rushers. And
Yeah.
now I'm looking at it and I'm looking behind Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and Josh Sweat. And you still got Brandon Graham, Nolan Smith, but there's not.
Don't forget Milton Williams now.
Yeah, he is actually quite good, but there's not that depth there. There's not that depth
No,
there.
I'm with you, dude. Hey, I do worry a little bit about it. Hassan Reddick was a dynamic pass rusher. There's no way around that. And so, like Huff, who I really appreciate because I love his style, and I think he's such a great option rusher. Like he's just got an answer for any set, and he's going to be around the quarterback. But they don't have that one guy that's like the home run hitter. I do contend that most D lines, although ironically we didn't have a double digit guy when we won the Super Bowl in Philly, Fletch was that guy, right?
Yeah.
Because he's a tackle. But you got to have one home run hitter, and I kind of wonder who that guy's going to be. I'm a big fan
Carter?
of Sweat, big fan of Huff. Carter, to me, Mina,
I think his ceiling is the highest of any of these players.
what do they say? Ceiling is the roof. Is that what the kids say? This guy, Mina, can be so good.
I think
just
it got lost
oh,
within like the whole implosion of the defense thing. What a year he had.
I know what it's like to be a rookie on a team where things aren't going well. I mean, and I can only imagine being him and being so good and being like, oh, if we just had a little coverage behind us and the run support was bad, the whole thing. Listen, they are asking a lot of young corners and maybe safeties. The linebackers, Dean was IR'd last year. Devin White was benched down in Tampa. I like the idea of the backers because I've been a Devin White fan, right? Including him riding horses fast as him and Ed Oliver on Instagram riding horses, like two of my favorite players for that matter. But is he going to be Devin White from a couple years ago? Is Nakobe Dean going to be able to stay healthy? Is Nolan going to take that next step? There are a lot of question marks, is all I'm saying.
So you go on Bills, Eagles, and then Bengals or Cowboys?
Bengals.
Bengals over Cowboys.
And I only say that because, and I'm not a Cowboys hater, but if you think the Cowboys are like Super Bowl contender this year, then I hate that take. If you're a fan and you're like, we're going to the Super Bowl, then I do hate that take because
I don't think Cowboys fans feel that way. They are the most miserable fan base this offseason. They're perpetually angry.
Well, then I love y'all because y'all are being realistic. And I think that's really cool. A generation ago, y'all wouldn't have been realistic at all. You can fly as many of those flags you put on the top of your windows when you roll them up in your sedans as you want. Just be realistic about your team. The Cowboys are not good this year. And hey, listen, I got nothing against Dak. I'm a big Dak fan, actually. I love Micah Parsons. I've actually defended Micah Parsons to Cowboys fans that are like, get him. His podcast sucks. His podcast is why they lost the game against. No, the reason they lost the game is because the Cowboys perform like the Cowboys when they get in those spots, even when they're really talented. And this year, they're not talented. They are just not offensively scary. CeeDee Lamb's a dog, but if he comes up with a hamstring, who you throwing the ball to?
Oh, yeah, it is. It is
That backfield.
very thin.
So when they had strengths, it was hard for them to get over the hump. I think the experiment's just over a little bit, and they're going to ride this thing out, figure it out.
All right. The next category I am calling flawed but feisty.
Yeah.
These are teams that I actually think all four of these teams could make deep playoff runs, but I think they've all got problems that, for me, put them below the tier we just talked about. These teams are the official team of the Chris and Mina friendship, the Miami Dolphins.
Hey,
The New
man.
York Jets.
We could have been huge Dolphins fans, man, if they just would have been cooler about the whole thing. Because honestly, I love the uniforms. I'm a huge fan of the guy Tua. Like he's just always like I've always liked him. Like he's just cool. He seems down to earth, humble, the whole thing to a fault. Sometimes I wish he'd just be like, "Hey, I'm the league leader in passing," like do what I, But I just think that. All right, I'll get to the Dolphins.
Oh, okay. Jets, I'm putting in this group.
Number one.
The Rams and the Browns. So before you rank them, let me ask you this. How do you feel about this tier as a whole? Like, do you think anyone is way too high, or am I leaving out anyone?
Browns in.
Because the Browns, outside of the quarterback, have arguably the best roster in the entire NFL.
Here's what I have. Because you sent me initially, if a couple things go right, the Browns were in there, and I'm glad you changed it because I have written down, if only one thing goes right. It's literally if this guy remembers how to play
Flawed
football.
by feisty is a football assessment, by the way.
Yeah.
Just talking about the team. But the team is awesome, dude. The team is so good.
That roster is incredible.
So good.
It's incredible. I like the coach.
Yeah, me too.
So, the Browns, I would put, honestly, the Browns and the Jets, to me, are very different, but kind of the same in their potential, in my opinion.
Arguably the two best defenses in the NFL. So will you put Jets then Browns?
I'm going to put Jets then Browns because I think Aaron Rodgers can throw the football over the mountains, dude. And
we'll see.
We'll see if he can stay healthy and the whole thing. If the whole team can stay healthy, that's my biggest question because you had a bunch of guys with injury histories. It's like everything's kind of revolving around that. And so I just look at the Jets and I say, last year I picked them to go to the Super Bowl, Mina, before the Rodgers injury, before camp. And I kind of stand by that because momentum's a hell of a thing, dude. If they'd have started hot, I think their defense was good enough, but eventually their defense just said, I can't do this every week. I can't do this every year. And eventually the dam breaks and they look awful. But I think if Rodgers is healthy and Williams stays healthy, they can do enough with the quick game to work around whatever's going on up front. They invest in the guy from Penn State, which is hopefully we're here in a couple years, or he might help us this year kind of pick. I love the defense. I think Ulbrich does a great job. I got a great deal of respect for him. Guy played the game, just a bad and then his defense plays like bad but he's got his work cut out from the last couple of years. Imagine how good that defense could be if they're not turning the ball over and accustomed to just going wrong. I've been on defenses like that. You expect the worst.
Yeah.
And if you've got Rodgers and all of a sudden you start putting together 10, 14 play drives where it's third and manageable and it's like you're on the road and the crowd gets loud and then quiet again. Crowd gets like, you're just like, all right, we'll just sit here for a while and watch this show. That's what I think the Jets are going to be more like this year. I put the Browns in there. I put the Rams then after them, and I put the Dolphins last. Listen, I just believe in Matt Stafford. I'm a Matt Stafford guy. I believe in McVay. They're going to have a lot to replace defensive with Aaron leaving. I thought they did a great job last year. They add guys like Cameron Curl, which I think was a really smart addition. You didn't have to pay a bunch of money for him. So listen, as long as you have those two horses outside and you add a back, like they know who they are. Like Sean McVay knows who he is. Like I got to interview him a month ago and it was like a dream come true for me. And I didn't even know it until the interview started because I was just like 5 minutes in, I was just obsessed with the guy. You know what I mean? And I was like, bro, I'm leaning in and I want to go practice right now. And I don't even know you. I get the Sean McVay thing and like talking to him about scheme. It's not just I remember this thing. He knows who they are. And I thought last year they did a great job of getting back to who they were with different window dressing, different run game, different ways to get to the play action, but a better quarterback than they had the year they went to the Super Bowl and better receivers. They're just as scary when they're rolling. I think the Rams are really good.
I actually had the Rams. I did top 10 offenses. I had them second for 2024, which people were kind of put off by. But when Stafford, Kyron Williams, and Nakua, forget even last year they didn't have a healthy Cooper Kupp, were together, they were as good as any offense in football. And you alluded to it. That run game to me, it's not only like amazing, like just the evolution of it and what they've done from an identity standpoint, right? With that downhill duo run game, but also a lot of defenses in the NFL aren't equipped to stop that right now. Like think about
there's a lot of guys
many
that
light defenses that don't have the bulk necessary or the linebackers. My final question for you before we move on: you have the Dolphins last. Is that more because of, if you had to label a concern, is it more this offense we've seen struggle at the end of the season, or is it more who's going to rush the passer? Because right now
both.
You have Chubb and Phillips coming off of injuries. You and I are both huge Jalen Phillips fans.
Love the guy.
And then Shaq Barrett retired.
Yeah.
Drafted a kid, but he's kind of raw. Like that to me is a huge concern.
I think the Dolphins are going to be a team that can kick your and run you up and down the field if you can't set an edge or if you can't stop the quick game, if you can't rush the passer, and they'll score 40 points on you. But if you can rush the passer, if you can play hard in the flat and you get guys to come down and tackle and you mix things up in windows and you make Tua pat the ball a little bit, like I hate beating – well, you can't say that, beating a dead horse. You shouldn't say that anymore. I hate exacerbating the point as if I'm doing a victory lap. The victory lap was like a year and a half ago. And my claim is like they're like a Ferrari, but the minute you take it off road a little bit, it's like and so – yeah, until I see them start to grind out, big wins. And I'm talking where they have to outscore people, ironically, because whenever they play these really good teams, it's a lower scoring game. That defense last year, I had a great deal of respect for the way they played. And I know that Fangio and the secondary weren't clicking and that sort of thing. And there was some like, why aren't we traveling the corner with the best guy and everything? And that's actually something that the new guy's supposedly going to do.
Weaver, yeah.
Anthony Weaver. Going to do that. So that's probably music to Jalen Ramsey's ears. And I like the Johnny Smith addition. I think that too, yeah. I think I respect Odell and the whole thing. This is going to be a good football team, but they're in the right tier here. Flawed but feisty. I think
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd want to play them in the playoffs depending on who I was, but I don't think they're going to go win 3-4 games in the playoffs in January. I don't think they're
All
there
right.
yet.
So the next tier is called they're having a mid off. These are teams that I feel like could go 9-8, 8-9. Just feels like they're hovering around 500. But if something breaks, and we can talk about, they could go do better or do worse. So bunch of teams in here. This is tricky. So I'm just gonna rattle them off to you. We've got the Jaguars, the Seahawks, the Bucks, the Falcons, and the Steelers. So 5 teams I'm putting in here. And you could quibble. I think the next category, there's 3 teams that you could put all of them in here as well. But the next category for me is like fun teams. So I'm putting them on the crap. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's start at the top here. Of these 5 teams, who do you have on top of the tier?
Man. So I want to believe that Atlanta can be very good. I want to believe that.
If you think Miami has trouble rushing the passer, let me introduce you to the
Atlanta
2024 Atlanta
Falcons. And I'm
Falcons.
going to tell you what Atlanta might be able to do. They might be able to score against good football teams.
I agree.
I think Kirk Cousins is the most interesting man in football when it comes to like the takes. Who is he? What do we think of him? The guy can play, and he ain't one of your blue chip guys, but there's almost should be a tier for guys that are like, they would call that the red tier right below blue or something. The red tier guys for 10 years, like a 10-year red tier guy at quarterback. Like,
Yeah.
I think I got to give him his props. I know at times he's gotten the bag and people might resent him for that, or the plaid shirts or that sort of thing. But I think he's going to have a nice year if he can stay healthy. It's another injury thing. It might be fun to see Penix if we end up in that situation. The script writers certainly tend to do things like that. I think Jacksonville is going to fix something that I thought was broken last year, and that was the defense.
Are you wait, pause. Are you a speaking of NFL nerd?
Brian Nielsen,
Yeah,
absolutely.
are you Let's go. You know who I think is gonna really flourish? Walker.
Oh,
Don't you
hey,
think Trevon Walker, Ryan Nielsen, match made in heaven,
I'm
big,
excited.
strong, athletic,
Yeah, and works hard,
versatile,
plays hard, works hard.
powerful.
I actually ran into him at like a cash register. Like I was like getting food or something, and there were 2 people in there buying food, and it was me and Trayvon Walker, and I'd never met him. And I was like, "Hey, dude, what's up? Like, are you Trayvon Walker?" And he like had no idea who I was, but I was like, man, we could really talk a while. Like number 2 picks, his career starts slow, and then you start to figure it out. Like I was like, you just have no idea that we have a lot in common, and then also
I
that
love
your coach is my old coach. Eventually, like at the end of the conversation, I was like, yeah, I actually used to play in the NFL for a little bit, and then we
that.
we like followed each other. So I like Trayvon Walker. I'm empathetic to like the amount of expectations that were and then also like
Yeah,
these guys are doing this and he's doing this. Well, you
Hutchinson,
looked up
yeah.
and they're killing him over sacks or like a certain metric. And then when he's got more sacks than the other guys for certain periods of last year, they're like, well, it's mostly Josh Allen, who Josh Allen had a great year and is a stud. I like Nielsen a lot. I like the way Atlanta played defense last year. I think Nielsen's like versatile. He's played different fronts and alignments. So I think the Jags are going to be better. I'm not going to count the Bucks out because I
Okay,
made
so
that.
Falcons, Jags, then Bucks.
Yep.
Do want to
And
keep the same
then,
order.
here's where you and I need to come together on something. I'm the biggest Steelers apologist in the whole thing, but look at their schedule this year.
Is it rough? I just
Oh,
think the defense is going to be so good that that regardless of who's playing quarterback,
well,
they'll
so
still
yeah,
it's still going to be like a
put the Steelers next. In fact, let's put the Steelers. I don't want to put them ahead of the Bucks, but I kind of do. Let's put the Steelers ahead of the Bucks. And the reason I'm worried about the Steelers is this. They might be a better team than the Bucks or right there, but like look at the second half of their schedule. It's all division
I mean
games.
that
We
division is horrible.
brutal. And then Eagles
Yeah.
and Chiefs. That's their last 8 games. So You tell me about the Seahawks.
Dude, I'm actually okay because I'm always wary of doing this because I get called a homer. But I think people are too out on the Seahawks.
Right. And flawed but feisty ahead of the Dolphins.
I, listen, I think that the defense is going to be an adjustment period with McDonald because that defense is complicated. But I also think there's certain players in that roster who are going to really shine. I think about like Devin Witherspoon, the kid they drafted, Byron Murphy. I
I
thought
love
was a fantastic pick for him in that defense. You think about Madubuike in Baltimore, and because that Baltimore defense was so elite up the spine, and Seattle, I think they're still missing linebackers, but I think they'll be okay. I think a guy that people really sleep on is Uchenna Nwosu. I know he's not
Yeah,
like a top
he's back.
of he's not one of the best edge rushers, but he's back. That's a big difference.
We
And
had
then
Mike there.
offensively, you had boy. How was he?
He was man. I could have talked to him for 2 hours. He's like a student in the game.
He's so good against the run.
He's a good player.
Good player. And then offensively, like it really just all hinges on the offensive line for me. Because if
Yeah.
Geno Smith, when he's protected, is amazing.
Hey, listen, you got two great young tackles, and I don't know. They could
Healthy.
be. I just want for people listening, like any of these teams could be too low in this tier here, and you set it up well because, I mean, there are things with the Steelers that kind of worry me, but one of them being like, who are your receivers? Let's work this out. There's a lot of pressure on
Yeah.
Pickens. I love Warren. I like
So
Harris a lot. So I mean,
the run game, I think, for the Steelers is going to be really, really good. I love what they've done with their offensive line, all that pulling action. Like, I think, and with Arthur Smith, like, it could be a good offense, actually. Not a sexy offense, but like a good offense.
that's why I kind of have them up there. If they just decide to lean into their identity and just pound the rock, and if Justin Fields eventually plays and they got some quarterback run game stuff, because how they were using Justin Fields over the course of his career, I know this isn't a hot button topic anymore, was negligence.
It's crazy the amount of take hours we spent arguing about Justin Fields, and now like
No,
none of it matters.
doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is like how's Caleb Williams going to play? Because then there'll be
Right.
people that say, "I told you they should have drafted
All right.
him."
Well, speaking of Caleb Williams, the next category is one that I'm calling League Pass because these are teams that like I just want to watch. I think they're going to be fun and interesting. I don't have them earmarked for like some people think these teams are playoff teams. They might be. There might be fringe teams if the two of the cases young quarterbacks play well. The Bears, the Colts, and the Chargers. It might be a little bit high for the Chargers, but
Give me the
kind of
Chargers
excited about.
one.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Chargers won.
Staley's out of the building. Justin Herbert's still the guy that everybody has been like sticking their neck out for. I mean, like, listen, obviously, it hasn't gone from a result standpoint the way you've wanted it to go so far. But I'm not going to trick my brain and be like, yeah, this guy sucks.
He doesn't
Like,
suck.
just because I got to argue with people online about Herbert or somebody else who has better stats or has won a playoff game. In this circumstance, I look at the guy and I'm like, he's special. And when you talk to NFL players, forget who I had on the other day. I had somebody on as a defensive player, and the Herbert thing came up offhand. I think it was Eric Reed, maybe. I don't want to misquote Eric Reed, but it kind of runs together. It was a player I really respected on defense, and the quickness with which he gave Herbert props was like it was affirming. It's like, yeah, it was almost like hearing CJ Stroud gush about Matt Stafford on that podcast with Gilly.
Great ball knower moment.
Oh, hey, bro. I'm like, he's a nerd. We love this dude, bro. I was like, he knows
Stafford top five.
ball, dude.
Stafford top
And
five.
then everybody in the
No,
room was like, what the are you talking about, bro? He's like,
no.
he
All of
felt
us at home
gaslit.
were Leo memeing. We were like, one of
He
us.
felt gaslit. But yeah, no, that's how I feel about Herbert. So,
Okay.
and more so, how I feel about Harbaugh. Okay. I don't know how long that lasts. It's never been his thing making it last. But man, what he did in San Francisco was nothing short of incredible, and I got a lot of respect for him. Had to play him twice a year. I know what that outfit's about. They're going to be tough. They're going to be physical. He turned that team that he inherited, which had a bunch of new guys, kind of a cratered roster a little bit. They had some. I don't want to like revisionist history, but they weren't that good. And there was strike shortened season. It was off the lockout, and so they have less time to get ready in the whole thing. They go win like 10 games.
Yeah.
And he's got Alex Smith looking like the best, as good as Alex Smith looked in Kansas City to me. And the only reason Alex Smith didn't finish the job is because we knocked him out, and then Colin Kaepernick runs in, and Colin changed everything, and he made Colin look incredible too. I'm not taking anything away from either of those guys. What I am saying is, like, Harbaugh's formula works, and I think he can be a differentiating kind of edge. All the
Yeah.
things that other coaches are afraid to set as like a standard in today's NFL, like he's just going to set the standard. And if you think you can't meet it, he doesn't need you. Like I
Well,
think
this
there's
part of the
things
reason they're my league pass team is because like Jim Harbaugh, first of all, he hasn't called plays in the NFL in 10 years, right? But what you saw in college at Michigan was a level of creativity with what they did in the run game, formations, motion. Like he will. I don't foresee any issues with him coming back to the NFL and calling an NFL offense that is fun and interesting. I'm interested in seeing it because they don't have very good pass catchers. I really like the McConkey pick, but they've got a good offensive line. They got Justin Herbert. It's going to be interesting. So you
McConkey.
got them
I like
first.
McConkey. McConkey's
I do like McConkey.
McConkey's just getting slept on a little bit, uh, unsurprisingly. But I think he's pretty good. I think they probably feel like they got an elite guy in a spot in the draft where it was kind of a steal. So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm cautiously optimistic. And then I put the Colts and then the Bears. No disrespect. I said on my pod, I think it was like right after the draft, they're going to win 9 games. And I didn't mean that as a slight. Like to win 9 games with a rookie quarterback is a pretty damn good accomplishment. It means you're moving in the right direction. I just think sometimes when you're so honed in on an offense and you're like, oh, they added this guy and they added this guy, it's kind of like a dream
Yeah.
team. They have this running back now, and that guy is like, well, I could pick some other offenses out that have, a lot of guys you've heard of. That doesn't mean it's going to come together and work for you. I think adding the pieces that they added defensively, I have so much respect for that defense and really a lot of respect for Eberflus, where there was a moment where I think the Chargers game, there was a moment where I thought he was lost, and he actually ended up not being lost at all. They really pulled it together, and while I think there might have been some credence to the, maybe keep Fields and figure it out that way, I see why Caleb's so special. It just takes time. The reason I put the Colts too is that team is just big and physical, and it's a like if one thing goes right situation for me. Um, if Richardson
Big
can play
Richardson.
and
Yeah.
stay healthy,
Yeah.
yeah, we had Ballard on and we were like, bro, how do you keep him from like hurting himself? And Chris was like, honestly, you just let him learn. Which there is some because if you take away that edge that he's got where he can get out on the edge of the defense and extend plays and that sort of thing, like I see something too, but he also has to learn how to get out of bounds. If he can stay healthy, they also picked up Flacco, didn't they?
Yeah, he's a backup. Yeah.
Their floor is so high.
Yeah.
It's just a high
Well,
floor.
they were knocking on the door. They were one drop away from the playoffs last year with
Oh
pretty
my.
bad quarterback play. Candidly, we'll get to that team.
Yeah.
So, and they got our. You're a fellow Latu guy, right?
Love him.
We're Latu.
Love him. I'm
This
hoping
four
he's really
man
good.
rush. This four man rush.
I'm hoping he's really good. I like him.
This pass rush is really good. All right. Let's get weird as next category. We're barreling towards the finish here. Well, we got a couple more categories after this that are kind of like the sad categories. Let's get weird though is not sad. These are games that I'm like kind of like weirdly obsessed with. The Vikings and the Cardinals.
I'm with
What?
you.
You're with me, right? Like they're not good, but you have my attention.
Oh, Minnesota might be okay. Like Minnesota to me, there's no reason for sure to say they're going to finish last in that division, right? There's no reason for sure when you look at like Chicago to say they're going to get swept by Chicago. I think Green Bay is a better team. I do.
It's a really tough division.
And Detroit's a better team. It's a really tough division. I think they got better in some spots, and I worry about their corners, but B Flow kind of figured out how to work around a lot of stuff last year. That's kind of a wild card to have B Flow.
Yeah, just absolute chaos.
Yeah, it's like every week, I'm sure preparing for that defense is like hell, you know? And so, yeah, they like, listen, I got a lot of respect for those two coaches, those two play callers. As far as play callers in the NFL, I got a ton of respect for B Flow because I played for him and I know what kind of guy he is, and he's also been through a lot of but he puts his head down, and that the performance that they had last year, the creativity, the coverages they played behind the fronts they played them behind were just like dizzying. And then they played hard, they played with an edge, and KOC to me
Really
is
good.
the most slept on great head coach in our league. The way he motivates that team, you can tell like he's just himself. Now I know some people in the building there, so I hear things, but I also just like watch the way he dials things up, and like to get Josh Dobbs to play well, to get was it Nick Mullins, to get three, four guys to play quarterback at a relatively high level last year, albeit against the old Detroit secondary in some spots. I was just so impressed. And as long as you have Justin Jefferson, if Sam Darnold, this is the biggest if.
I think he's starting.
No, I know, but I'm saying if he's that dude a little bit, if he's got that Jon Snow in him where we thought he was dead and he's not dead, and KOC is like Melisandre, then we got a shot here. Like we're gonna be an 8, 9, maybe 10 win team if he plays well. I'm just because I believe in those coaches.
I am surprised you didn't reach for some of the like Andrew Van Ginkel and Brian Flores
Oh no, no,
escaping
no, no, no
prospect.
question. I mean, I like Yank, I like Grenard, I like I mean, and
Blake
part of the reason
Cashman from the
Cashman
Texans can play. Yeah, they have some like sneaky good under the radar defensive signings. I think that are good for
under
their
the
defense.
radar.
Okay,
Yes.
so you have them over the Cardinals, to be clear.
Yeah, because the Cardinals have too much work to do on defense.
Agree.
I think the Cardinals are an NFL offense. Like they're going to beat people next year, and people are going to, and they won't be sneaking up on them because there's some good tape last year. Hard to play as much cover three as he wants to play, where the corners aren't. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
there was a lot of work to do last year. They really didn't have a lot of talent on defense, and Gannon is a good football coach. I think.
I think so too. That was one of the big revelations for me of the 2023 season.
You
Their defense, I put them in the weird category because the defense, I didn't really realize this during the season, was unbelievably weird. And actually, that was kind of similar to Flores, where they were just like, it, we're gonna just we're like triaging
It was
here,
hard to tell what they were in sometimes.
like three safeties, like a
Yeah.
very strange stuff. A lot of funny simulated pressures. So the next category is the second to last category. I'm calling it limbo. These are teams that I feel like are in transition. I don't know if they know they're in transition. The Titans, the Raiders, and the Saints. Because like they're kind of caught between, they're not rebuilding yet, but I think we agree that there's some pretty serious problems with these rosters.
I'm a big fan of Mickey Loomis, but he's got to know they're in a bit of a transition. I also think that like
Does he need Nancy Pelosi to come in and
I don't know what he needs, man. But here's the deal. Like the Saints to me are a little bit cagey. Like they're a little bit they got some good players on that roster, like aging players, but they got some good players where and I like
yeah,
their receiving core. I play with
yeah.
the Saints in Madden, Mina, and I give people that work because they're like, what, 79 overall?
Rashid Shaheed.
I'm like Shaheed. I'm running mesh. I'm running bench. People don't know who they want to man up. They can't man up. I got Kamara out of the backfield, the whole thing. You, you want to run cover three, I'm killing you in the flats. Like and Carr, actually, if you protect him.
Olave.
Anyways, this is all Madden, but in real life, they're probably three
No,
out of
everything you're saying is accurate. Like, mesh with Chris Olave and Derek Carr behind like an offensive line that can protect him sounds great. The problem is, I'm not sure this offensive line can protect Derek
that's
Carr.
the problem. So I would probably put them three, but all these teams to me, the Raiders have the highest floor to me because I think they're going to be very motivated. I think they're going to play physical. I really do think there's something to AP like kind of muddying things up. Like, like that's something I trust him on. And little things like getting Jack Jones there. And like everybody's like, "Oh, I forgot about the Panda Express thing and the whole, like this guy with a checkered past, Bill didn't like him.
Balled out,
He
the second
balled
half of
out.
the
And you
season.
know why?
Yeah.
Because when you talk to Antonio Pierce, like I knew that kid in Arizona State. Like he knows how to get through to guys and he played the game. And I also think, they're gonna continue to improve on defense. You saw guys step up with the pass rush that aren't dudes per se, but like made some plays. The Kuntz guy, like there's like a couple guys that are gonna. Is that his name? What's his name?
Yeah, no, Kuntz, Malcolm Kuntz.
It,
He's you just hit bingo on the NFL
hurt.
hipster favorite players. Yeah,
So I think the Titans are actually a little bit spicy. I think the Titans should be
confusing team.
they might be
Conspiracy.
it might be between the green and the yellow to me. They might end up being
That's
in the
fair.
green, you know,
They
because
have good players on that team.
that's it. You got a blue chip player in the secondary, you got a blue chip player up front on defense. Two of my favorite players in the league. The nasty on that defense,
Yeah.
led by Denard, who's a nasty dude himself. He's got a little Greg Williams in him. He's got a little Jim Schwartz. He's got a little like that Buddy Ryan triangle of influence. Like a lot of it got into
Weaver in Miami
yeah,
too, I think, is gonna do some similar stuff.
which I like. And so I
Yeah.
think they're going to be good. I think when the owner fires Vrabel and puts in the sheet that like we got X, Y, and Z going for us, and she includes in a quality young starting quarterback or an exciting young starting quarterback, that means that in that building they believe he can play. And I started to notice last year when he was making throws that D Hop seemed a lot is a really inexact way to figure out a guy, but like those guys know if the kid can play before we do.
Yeah.
And D Hop, his reaction to him being in the lineup and throwing him the ball was like very excited. Now Tannehill was very limiting in some of the throws he could make, and I got a lot of respect for him, but they like Levis. So I'm
Agree.
actually kind of excited. The Pollard thing's a little head scratcher, but I like some of the additions. Boyd, good.
Bill Callahan coaching that offensive line.
Yeah, dude.
All right. So you went, to be clear, Titans, Raiders, Saints is
Yep.
your order? Okay. So we're in the last category. I am calling this final category "Can Credibly Play the No One Believes in Us" card. These are the teams that nobody believes in. This is based on the power rankings I have done, looking at Vegas lines, conversations on TV. I am not saying I don't believe in any of them. There's actually one team here that I think I'm a lot higher on than the consensus. You can try to
Me
guess
too.
which one that is.
All right, ready? On three. One,
1,
two,
2,
three. Carolina.
Patriots.
Oh, Pats too. Pats
Carolina.
too. Pats too.
Wow.
Oh, I'm just thinking like
Okay.
with Carolina, I'm thinking more like win totals, like gambling.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
Pats,
yeah.
the Pats,
Dude, Pats are 4.5. Oh,
the Pats are gonna listen.
four and a half?
If Mayo
That
can coach,
defense? No way.
that defense is
No
very
way.
good. That defense is very good.
Okay. What rankings though? Patriots, Giants, Commanders, Broncos, Panthers. Let's just go top to bottom here. This is your rankings. My tier of
Yeah,
the rankings.
it's so hard because I don't know how the hell the quarterback's gonna play in Washington, but if the quarterback's decent,
Washington.
this is tough. I'm gonna go out on a limb. I'm going Broncos number one. Broncos country, let's ride. Sean Payton still knows how to coach.
Get me excited about the Broncos because I feel like I've been so low on them, and I want to feel better about this team.
They probably have the most proven head coach out of this group.
That's all I got.
And a guy in Drew Lock who, you got to be wary of guys who
No, he's gone. He's gone.
or not Drew Lock. I mean the new guy.
Bo
The
Nix,
Bo
yeah.
Nix. Unfortunately, that's a bad Freudian slip. And I'm a big Drew Lock fan, even though he ripped my heart out and my son's
He,
heart.
he
Sunday
might
night.
play. Oh yeah, the
Oh, I think he might play too.
Giants. Yeah.
But Bo Nix, he was so bad at Auburn, at times that I think,
Yeah.
and I'm no college football expert, but I think sometimes we don't give kids chances to improve. And, like we underestimate how much a situation can hurt. So, none of these guys are perfect quarterbacks. There might be a couple that come out every few years, but like maybe this kid's okay. Maybe Peyton's not doing the thing where he makes up that he really liked a guy. Like, I think you know what I'm saying? Like, I believe in
Yeah.
Sean, and I'm cautiously optimistic about that team. Maybe a little high to put him one here, but these teams are all we're scratching. It's the scratch and sniff at
I
7-Eleven.
think a lot of it does hinge on what you just said, which is like, what if Peyton actually looks at him and sees a skill set that he can call an interesting offense around. And I don't know. We did the X Factors pod, and Peyton was my X Factor because I was like, he's still one of the greatest play callers in the history of the NFL, right? Like, I think we've kind of memory hold that because of what we saw. All right, Broncos defense improved last year. So the year
I'm
went on.
going to go Patriots to
Great.
because of the things we talked about, that defense. I mean, that
Defense,
defense is like it's a real defense. And I honestly like
get
the
Judon
offense.
back.
If they just they're like, this is who we are, and we play like that because it is gross outside. But they're going to be able to run the football. Like Brissett's an experienced guy. They can kind of work this kid. What if the kid ends up being decent and you see him week 9?
I
Like,
like him. I'm high on him, apparently.
I think, you know what's funny? I think people hate Josh Allen so much that the Josh Allen comp has hurt him. I think
Interesting.
they don't want to see another big, erratic, tall guy who's athletic. Like, they're just like, oh, I'm over that. But maybe this guy's really good. I don't know. I'll put the Patriots second because I believe in my guy Gerard
Okay,
Mayo and the
good.
youth movement there. I'll put Washington. No, I can't decide on New York. I know they're bad, but how bad?
Well, I think the pass rush is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the offense will be better than they were last year, but I am pretty suspect of some of
Six
the
and
other.
6-11 would be generous. So I'm going to go ahead and put Washington because they're upside ahead of them,
Okay.
and I'll put Carolina right ahead of them
You
too.
said you're higher on Carolina. I was really excited to hear that argument.
No, I'm higher than most. It really, like, I don't want
Yeah,
to put them. I just wouldn't be
humbling.
surprised if they made a little jump. My point is this: the Bryce Young thing. We just went through it with CJ. How did CJ look in that Jets game in the pouring rain when everybody was hurt? And I understand, like, that's a crisis, but we got to start giving these guys a little bit more grace. And I don't mean like cape for first round quarterbacks because they're going to get jobs their whole careers. Like, but I mean, in the media, I'm going to
Yeah.
give guys, if I can, a year or two, especially because I needed a year or two as a position player. And I look at Bryce and I say, like, I saw some things in that Packers game. Now I saw things in a lot of Packers games, right? You know what I'm saying? But
Listen, they played the Texans. He made some throws. They won. Remember that? People
they
have
won that
completely
low
forgotten
scoring
that they
game.
won that game. Yeah.
It was hell there last year. It's
Yeah,
really
it was.
hard
It was
to
really
walk
bad.
into a situation like that where they're not protecting. Thielen's your guy, but like it's just not a lot to
Yeah.
do there. And Dave Canales, I think he's like the short quarterback whisperer.
The short quarterback. I saw a picture of Bryce today, by the way, reporting with like, do you see that with the backpack? He's wearing like
No,
and I was just like, somebody has to get to him and just you tell him he can't wear a backpack with 2 straps. He can't do it. You
because he looks too much like a kid.
yeah, yeah. It really, I'll send it to you. It's
Oh, I didn't
that
think about that.
that this is these are the things that like veterans need to help young players with.
Does he have like a bagged lunch in his
Yeah,
back?
I'll send you the photo. It's really it's quite he looks really young. Yeah.
And I'm not saying he's going to be a world beater. I'm just saying give him a
No,
year
no,
before we
you're
decide that he's
wearing
like
the
awful.
incredibly play. Okay, so let's look at this list. We're done. You said that you had some quibbles. Is there any team that you think like I radically? We talked about the Titans, a team that could be a little bit higher. Was there any other team that you would like to let their fan base know that it was I who disrespected them with my tiering? You
Yes.
feel that they should be higher?
Cowboys fans, you've been sold a dream.
You have them lower,
Yeah,
and
they're not a top 10 football team.
so you would put them in flawed but feisty, or they're having a mid.
Having a mid off a little bit. And I don't think Cowboys fans would argue with me. And
Yeah,
it's nothing
yeah,
like, like it's just the roster's not what it was. Hey,
fair enough. Fair
McCarthy,
enough.
he ain't dead, obviously. We've been counting that guy out for a few years now, and he just keeps. I don't know. I thought he actually did a pretty good job last year. Okay, so I would put the Jets higher. I would put the Texans higher. I would make the duh a little bit bigger because I don't think there's really one duh. Like I think it's like a duh. I think
Would
it's
you put the Chiefs in their own tier where it's like, come on, like we're not going to do this.
yeah,
Like
like come
I'm tired.
on.
I'm not gonna do the whole song and dance where we question
No,
them.
but I think the Bills should be higher. I think
I love
Jets
that.
should be higher. I think the Rams could argue that they should be higher. I think the Bengals could end up lower. But I think the Cowboys for sure should be lower. And yeah, I'm selling a little hope to Titans, Vikings, Chargers fans, Colts fans. And I have no idea how to package it, but I'm selling you in Charlotte hope. Get some.
That feels like a good place to end. Chris Long, you guys can check him out on the Greenlight podcast. You're on YouTube as well if you're watching this on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining the show.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Hope your little family's good.